My name is Samantha. I've always enjoyed making something with my hands, and at 38 years old, I've recently become obsessed with making hair accessories. I've made too many for myself to wear, so I'm selling them online. It's nice to combine my hobby with making a bit of extra cash. Thanks anyway. I'd like to tell you a story from about 10 years ago. When I was 26 years old, I married Bobby, who's the same age as me. But for about the first 2 years of our marriage, things were pretty smooth, I think. But after those 2 years, to put it bluntly, my male Louise started becoming a handful.
And from our engagement, she always said, "I'm looking forward to seeing my grandchildren."
Louise, who lost her husband early on, seemed a bit lonely when her only son got married. She seemed to overcome that loneliness by looking forward to having grandchildren.
At our wedding, she even said, "One day, your children will be starting their own journeys too. You'll feel just like I do now, so get ready. You better get serious about getting pregnant once you're settled."
She kept telling me such things. I could understand where she was coming from, so I used to brush it off with a laugh, saying, "You're jumping the gun," even if I felt a bit uncomfortable. But as time passed, Brillies had been acting noticeably different. The first sign was an unexpected phone call. Of course the caller was Louise, but getting a call from her was unusual. Even though she is my Mile, we were not very close. Ever since we got married, we had maintained an appropriate distance. We only visited her twice a year, for summer and Christmas holidays, and otherwise only communicated when there's something up.
Samantha, do you know about coral?
What? Oh, you mean coral from the ocean? Yeah, we know it. I was worried I misheard her or misunderstood her question, because she asked me out of the blue. I got confused.
Coral is said to be good for fertility. I saw it on a shopping channel. Maybe you should get one?
Well, I don't really wear jewelry apart from my wedding ring. In the first place, I had never thought of buying coral on a shopping channel. It was not even my taste, so I didn't want it. What on earth got into her all of a sudden?
Oh, really? It's good for fertility, though.
I never expected her to seriously believe in the fertility charm. But I finally realized that she recommended coral because she was eager to have grandchildren. If she was serious, that's quite the roundabout way to approach fertility. After that, Louise went on and on about having children and her pride as an experienced mother, and it took about an hour to finally hang up the phone. It was a lot to handle, being pushed this much just because she wanted grandchildren. Maybe I should look online to see if there's a doll that looks like a grandchild. While aimlessly browsing Amazon, I was thinking about how exhausting it would be to hear such nonsense in the future, and just felt overwhelmed. Then it was a week later. Louise came to our apartment. Realizing my husband had the day off, she was overly joyful, exclaiming, "Perfect timing."
Take a look at this. Birthday names like Olivia and Liam seem to be popular these days.
She showed me a book titled Happy Baby Name Dictionary, and my spine chilled. We hadn't even had a baby yet, but she was trying to name an imaginary baby. I almost blurted that out, but held back.
But I think Dragon is a cool name, isn't it?
I didn't want to give my child such bizarre names. Louise had overthought this imaginary baby's name. If a real baby were to be born, she would get so excited and suggest names even more bizarre. I shuddered at the thought. I couldn't help but worry about the future.
Samantha, you should drink this from today.
King saying that, she handed me a box with writing in a language I couldn't recognize. It was obviously suspicious.
I bought it online. It's tea blended with 40 different herbs, said to be good for fertility.
That was why it had such a strange smell. Peached and I didn't try it, but if I did, it felt like I'd lose my sense of taste at the cost of getting pregnant.
I glanced at Bobby for help, but he just said, "You can do it."
Fertility is not only a women's issue, but he sounded like it wasn't his issue at all. I thought we had to work together as a couple, but I stayed silent. Saying something wouldn't change the situation here. Teachers. Louise pulled out from her large bag a stork patterned, a ladybug necklace, a t-shirt with a lotus painted on it, and a peacock-colored skirt. The shoes were bright red flats. Guess what? From head to toe, they were full of motifs associated with fertility. It was a complete baby blessing outfit. It seemed awful, though. As if I walk outside in the outfit, there was no doubt I'd be seen as a strange person. Definitely no one would approach me. It was obviously weird.
But to top it all off, she left behind a very creepy doll, claiming that people who got this doll got pregnant.
It seems she was recommended this by a fortune teller at a local fair. It looked so creepy that it would make a baby cry. She definitely got swindled. After Louise left, it goes without saying that I was dumbstruck looking at the weird things she brought. It was half a month after that incident. I caught a nasty cold for the first time in years. I don't get sick often, but maybe I had just been worn out from everything lately. Coughing hard, I gaze at the fertility doll that my husband decided to display somehow. It was so awkward. I felt like I was being stared at by the doll. As I was thinking that the doorbell rang. I didn't order any deliveries. I didn't have any plans of my friends visiting me either. But to the fever or maybe the eeriness, I got chills down my spine. When I opened the door, there was Louise. "I'm done."
Samantha? Oh dear. You caught a cold.
Yes.
Sniffling. I hesitantly opened the door to greet Louise.
Well, this is perfect timing. Let's pray for fertility at the church.
What? My reply had an unintentional sharp edge to it, probably due to my worn-out voice, but she seemed unfazed.
When you're weakened, that's when you'll feel God's touch the most. He'll bestow upon you endless fertility.
I was astonished. It was obviously not the right timing. At that moment, I just wanted to go to bed. What did she mean by endless fertility? I wasn't planning on popping out hundreds of babies.
Look, I'm not feeling great and I don't want to give you my cold, so today isn't the best day.
I almost asked her to leave, pausing to choose my words carefully. but Louise didn't seem to mind at all.
I don't mind catching a cold. If it means I get a grandchild, it's worth it.
It seemed Louise would do anything to have a grandchild. It was kind of impressive, but it was way too much.
Well,
Let's go then.
Police then dragged me, still in my pajamas, into a waiting cab. I couldn't believe it. Unfortunately, my body didn't move the way I wanted because I was sick, so I was dragged by Louise to pray for fertility in the dead of winter. After I got home, as expected, my fever went up.
my husband came home soon after, so I explained what happened and said, I've lost my appetite. Sorry, but can you make your own dinner?
What? I came home tired, and now you're asking me to cook for myself.
I came home tired because of your mother, too.
I was so exhausted that I couldn't sugarcoat my words. I just bluntly told him.
Fine then.
What did he mean by fine? That grunt was also so annoying. I felt a surge of complaints, but I was too tired to argue anymore. It was difficult for me to speak because of my cough. I couldn't deal with him. After that, even though my fever subsided, my cough persisted for a while. It eventually led to a diagnosis of early-stage pneumonia. I was sure it was because of that church visit. I felt angry, but I focused on my treatment to get better as soon as possible. Actually, by the time a month had passed since I caught the cold, I was almost back to my normal health, although I still had a slight cough. I was still not fully recovered, but I could finally live a normal life. I thought so until Louise showed up at our apartment again. Damn it! Afterwards, my inconsiderate husband just let her in without a second thought. Even though she is my mouse, she can't just walk in anytime. It was so frustrating. To top it off, as soon as Louise entered the living room, she looked at me and said,
So, did you get pregnant with my precious grandchild yet?
I knew that the only thing she cared about was whether I got pregnant or not. She expected me to get pregnant even if I had been struggling with pneumonia. No way. Considering my recent health issues, I wasn't exactly in the best shape to try for a baby. Besides, it hasn't been that long since then. Biologically, it's quite tough in many ways.
What's with the attitude? I've always felt this way, but don't you think you're not trying hard enough to get pregnant? You need to be more serious about it.
Well, if I was constantly being pushed like this, it would obviously lower my motivation. But I didn't tell her that.
I've been waiting for a grandchild for so long. I might pass away if you took too long. Are you infertile? If that's the case, please divorce quickly. I want Bobby to have a child with a new wife.
I was taken aback, but I saw an opportunity. Sure, let's get a divorce then.
No, wait. Samantha. Mom?
I agreed to get a divorce, and Louise seemed happy. And then there was my panicking husband. That's when Louise and I, unusually in sync, asked him, "Got any complaints?" My husband fell silent. That was how I got a divorce. To be honest, I was also getting sick of my husband not being on my side, and I had been contemplating divorce ever since the incident when I caught a cold. So, I had no doubts. Fast forward 3 years.
Walking around town, I suddenly heard someone shout, "Oh my God!"
Looking around, I saw Bobby and Louise.
Samantha, what's going on here?
I was momentarily confused, but when I followed where Louise was pointing, I immediately realized, oh, I'm pregnant. After I announced my divorce that year, a former coworker from my old job, hearing the news, invited me out for dinner. I thought he invited me just as an ex-colleague. But he told me I've always had feelings for you, but we work together, so I didn't say anything. Then you got married. At first, I thought dating was too much of a hassle and held off, but gradually, I started to think maybe I should give this a shot, and we began dating. Then he proposed to me. I've loved you for so long. I have no doubts. Will you marry me? We eventually got married. Just to my own surprise, it was a whirlwind marriage, followed by a whirlwind pregnancy. By the way, I was walking with my current Mel that day. Samantha, who is she? Samantha, who is she?
Oh, that's my ex-husband and ex-mule, I replied.
My current Mel nodded and stared at the two of them.
That you infertile. Samantha?
Louise blurted out, looking rattled. Despite her, Abby was looking even more pale.
Well, who knows? Maybe I got pregnant thanks to all the lucky charms you gave me back then, I said with a smirk.
No way. You couldn't get pregnant back then. Just were you doing something to prevent it? Were you deceiving us?
No, not at all. But now, I got pregnant, and I'm incredibly happy. Maybe back then, there was too much stress to get pregnant.
Are you trying to say we were the cause of the problem?
I didn't say that. There could be other reasons, like what you mentioned earlier.
What? No way. I didn't say anything and just smiled at Bobby. His face was even paler. Actually, it was turning white.
Hey, what's going on? Bobby? Louise asked him.
I'm not the problem. It was Samantha's fault.
You know, I actually went to get tested for infertility. I never told you the results, though.
Bobby looked completely dumbfounded. He looked so drained that a slight nudge would probably knock him over. It was ridiculous.
You haven't had yourself checked, have you? And just so you know, I'm now pregnant in my new marriage.
I smiled and Louise exclaimed, "Oh my God," and slumped to the ground.
It's a shame, isn't it? It would be difficult for you to have grandchildren. Well, it's probably impossible. How about finding yourself another son instead?
I told her what she told me before.
You were the infertile one. Louise shouted at Bobby.
Bobby just kept repeating, "No, it's not me."
You remember you had the mumps before we got married, right? Did you know that when adult men get mumps, it can lead to other complications and even infertility? In fact, you had some health issues after that, didn't you? You should have gone to a proper clinic and checked thoroughly if you were fertile or not.
Oh no.
Louise then shouted, "So it was you after all. Give me back my grandchild."
It was strange because she behaved as if her grandchild was already born. Over the course of 3 years, The imaginary baby seemed to have grown significantly in the mind of Louise.
In a heated argument, Louise kept calling Bobby infertile, and Bobby kept murmuring, "Is it really me?"
Watching this chaotic scene, I thought once again, I'm glad I got divorced.
Well, if you guys want to fight amongst yourselves, go right ahead. I'll be going back to my new home full of love. Oh yes, my current Mile will be naming the baby.
When I said that, Louise started crying out. It was supposed to be my grandchild.
It was embarrassing, so I just ignored her and left.
After a while, Bobby contacted me as if he just remembered something. He said, "Can we remarry? I don't mind even if you have a child."
It was utterly ridiculous. Actually, Louise took Bobby to a medical checkup. It turned out that he was indeed infertile. Well, I had suspected it all along. Devastated by this revelation, Louise told Bobby, or marry a woman who already has a child. Preferably a very young child. That sounded like she was suggesting kidnapping. It was awful. I couldn't believe what she said. But for Bobby, the idea of marrying a woman with a child wasn't appealing aside from me, whom he didn't really want to divorce in the first place. He seemed to be eager to remarry me, but I had no intention of that. Distraught over Bobby's infertility, Louise cut off ties with him. Bobby blamed Louise for all his miseries. So, he also stopped contacting Louise. Based from the messages I got from Bobby, it seemed both he and Louise were lonely and wanted to reconcile, but neither felt they could do so unless he had a child. I always thought that day would never come, and even 10 years later, seeing Bobby on SNS, he was still single. He looked very old because of all the stress. Maybe he also felt lonely because he wasn't seeing his only family. Louise? It seems Louise, having cut ties with her son, also has been spending a lonely life with no one to rely on, even when she fell ill. They should just apologize to each other and reconcile. On the other hand, I've had 3 children with my current husband. Then the first was named by my current mill, the second by my current Phil, and the third by my husband and me. Their names are Olivia, Emma, and Charlotte. Everyone had a similar sense of naming, so they never suggested bizarre names like Dragon. Having 3 young children was challenging at first, but with the help of my current mill and my current husband, who, despite his busy work schedule, took care of most household chores, I didn't feel stressed. My current husband earns much more than Bobby, so we live in a nice condo where my in-laws also live. It's an ideal environment to focus on raising our kids. Maybe that's why we were blessed with 3 children. My life is much better now compared to when I was living with Bobby. All of my daughters are quite tomboyish, even getting into fights with the boys in the neighborhood, but they're just too adorable. They're the reason I started making hair accessories. We're going to an amusement park with my in-laws tomorrow. I can't wait to spend a great time with my loving family.